Story 1. I once had someone confess to me that they gave someone a lethal injection and killed them. The person's family and police thought that it was just an addict who had overdosed. It definitely makes you look at people differently. Story 2. I was pretty drunk and lying on the floor in a quiet part of the house during a party. One of my friends came up to me, did not seem that drunk, and said he sometimes thought about how easy it would be to kill me. While I was still processing that, he put the sole of his boot on my chest and pressed down slightly. Not enough to hurt, but enough to feel it. Then he said, "I mean, it would be so easy to crush your ribs right now," before smiling and walking away. Story 3. A close friend told me he thinks he may have killed a man. He was attacked late at night while walking through a park. He defended himself and knocked the man out. The man hit his head on the way down, and my friend left quickly. He was never able to find any information about it and, to this day, has no idea if the man ever recovered. Story 4. One of the residents I work with at a nursing home was a sweet old lady who passed away some time ago. She told us that back in the 1950s, her husband had shot their son-in-law to death because the son-in-law was very abusive to their daughter, and the police would not do anything about it. She had helped cover up the murder. We did not actually believe her because she was so kind, until one of my coworkers looked it up and found out that the resident's husband had been discovered and eventually went to jail for a light sentence. I believe it was only a few years, and there were newspaper articles about it. Story 5. Back in 2016, I met a woman on the Internet Movie Database message boards who was obsessed with Stephen Hawking. Not obsessed with his work, but obsessed with him. She would talk about how cute she thought he was and even had a YouTube channel full of various clips of him. I thought she was trolling. Then, one day, I saw a news headline saying that a woman had been arrested for stalking and sending death threats to Stephen Hawking. I clicked on the article and was shocked and horrified when I saw that it was her. Story 6. Over 30 years ago, I worked as a technician in a small computer store in France. One of our clients was a bulky man with an accent from the south of France, which made him stand out because we were not in the south. He asked if I could come to his home to help with his computer, and I did after work. There was nothing to fix, and I did not charge him. He was glad for my help and insisted on repaying me. He asked if I wanted to know how to blow up a car. I declined. Sabotage someone's brakes? No, thank you. He then asked if he could do something for me, like cut someone's tires as a warning or at least put sugar in their tank. I politely excused myself. He had a tendency to do strange things to cars and seemed serious about it. I did my best to avoid him after that. A colleague and I thought he was likely hiding from the police too. Story 7. A man in rehabilitation once told all of us that he had been intimate with his mother's Maltese terrier. The individual had significant mental health issues, and none of us questioned whether he was telling the truth. Story 8. I had an old friend admit to me that she had been in a relationship with a 12-year-old when she was 26. She defended it by saying they never had any physical contact and that she easily falls in love. This was only our second or third interaction after not seeing each other for over 10 years. I had never felt so sick talking to someone in my entire life. I cut contact with her immediately after hearing that. I also learned that the victim and their family had not been in contact with her for many years and had threatened her with legal action. I am glad the victim was okay in the end. I sometimes buy items from the business the victim's family owns to support them and to oppose the person who hurt them. Story 9. Odd people like to talk to me for some reason. It has been like that all my life. Complete strangers have told me about suicide attempts, abortions, infidelities, being the victims of various types of abuse, not loving their children, and so on. I have never heard a murder confession, though. Story 10. Guy I knew from college. A few of us who worked at the tutoring center all started talking about our first time. When it was his turn, he admitted that he and his friends had sex with a girl with cerebral palsy. He didn't even know if she liked it. I was sick to my stomach immediately. All of us got real quiet in the car. My sister has cerebral palsy. I never spoke to him again. A few years later, he was in the news because he murdered his father with an axe. You just never know people. Story 11. I had to end a sexting arrangement with a girl because she said she used to fantasize about school shooters and kept a Columbine scrapbook. She showed me the scrapbook along with some posters in her room. I'm into unusual things, but there is unusual and then there is disturbing. Story 12. Rest in peace, American Grandpa. He had a tendency to casually share horrific World War II stories in the middle of a conversation. I remember one time he was explaining why he hates open fields. I hate open fields. I remember seeing 2 Sherman tanks get blown to hell from German guns. I saw the tank commander roll out dancing while on fire. The German machine guns cut him down. I still hear the screams. Anyway, that's why I hate open fields. Now eat your cereal. Story 13. My boxing coach told me and a few other guys that he once simulated drowning a little kid just because the kid was being annoying. Story 14. A guy in college once decided to tell me in gruesome detail about the time he beat a rat to death with a shoe. This was his response when I mentioned that I love animals. I avoided him like the plague until he left at the end of the term. Story 15. I knew a man in his early 30s who had multiple sexual relationships with girls as young as 15. He often said, "Age is just a number, and people mature differently." Overall, he was difficult to be around. Story 16. A former coworker of mine casually admitted that he drowns cats in a river. Story 17. A friend told me that when he and his friends were teenagers, they used to buy watermelons and drive around throwing them at homeless people. When I say a room has never gone so silent. Story 18. In January 2018, my boyfriend at the time came home and told me he had murdered someone. I did not believe him until 3 days later when the body was found. He was arrested 3 weeks later and eventually went to trial, where he was found guilty and sentenced to 43 years in prison. Story 19. A young child of about 8 who lived across the road from us, when asked why he had a bandage on his hand, said that his father had shot him with a shotgun in his hand after he refused to give his piggy bank to his alcoholic father. This shook us to the core, and we immediately contacted child services. Nothing much was done by the authorities, but that was the last time we had any interaction with that family. Story 20. A woman at my first job in her mid to late 30s went on a completely unprompted rant to me, who was 17 or 18 at the time, about how her father molested and abused her as a child. She said he had friends who were also abusers, but it was not his fault. He was a good dad, and that was how he showed love. She was upset when he died. Looking back, I should have involved someone else, but I just wanted to move on. She has a daughter whom I know she loves a lot, but I can only hope she does not put her child in a similar position because she thinks it is normal. I am glad the father never met her daughter, so at least the child was not abused by him. Story 21. Someone I already disliked admitted to me that they enjoyed a particular maritime security job because the food was good and they got to shoot a bunch of locals. He told me this at the entrance to a supermarket, proud as he could be. Story 22. A friend I have known for 20 years casually announced in gruesome detail how his dogs killed someone else's pet. There was an accidental encounter between them, and the dogs reacted violently. I will never get over how unconcerned he was for the other animal or its owners. I am slowly distancing myself from him now. I cannot look at him the way I used to. Story 23. It was admitted to my stepdad by his longtime friend from the army. He was around my sisters and me when we were young teenagers. One time we had a house party, and the friend was asking my stepdad where I was. I was in my room. He kept telling him how pretty I was. My sister had her friends at the party, and he started making them pose for pictures. The day after, he never posted or sent them to my parents. A few weeks later, he casually admitted to my stepdad that he loved 16-year-old girls and enjoyed sitting outside watching girls walk home from school. My stepdad was disgusted and furious, immediately cut him off, and never spoke to him again. Story 24. The very first thing this tall guy in my class said to me, our very first interaction ever, was, "So I cut myself last night." And he proceeded to show me fresh new scars on his arm. What a strange thing to admit to a complete stranger, to be honest. Story 25. I once woke up next to a man I was dating who calmly told me that he had sexually assaulted me while I was asleep. Story 26. I had a friend who admitted he regularly killed squirrels and described the details of killing them. This explains a lot about his lack of empathy. Story 27. This woman, who was in one of my university classes in her mid-30s, casually mentioned that she was still in love with her ex-boyfriend from 10 years ago. She seemed quite hung up on it. I thought maybe it was an on and off situation. I asked if they had any pictures together, just out of curiosity. She pulled up her phone, and a picture of him from his Internet Movie Database page was her lock screen. I then realized she might be unstable. I did some online research because the whole situation felt strange. Turns out the man was a movie director in Los Angeles, and they dated for a few months. I found old court documents from 2014 stating that she had followed him overseas and lived in someone's basement to stalk him. She was considered violent. She had a 10-year restraining order against her. I also found some of her blog posts obsessing about his new wife and changing her hair to look like her. The most surprising part is that she changed her last name to his. That's why she was talking to me about him, because the restraining order had expired. He might want to renew it. Story 28. I had a friend who really liked to draw. I was helping them clean their room one day, and I found a book with pictures of people hurting themselves on purpose. I asked, "What is this?" They said, "Oh, I convinced those people to hurt themselves for fun." Story 29. My old boyfriend was very high when he told me that his mother was a drug user and introduced him to drugs, including marijuana and pills, when he was 15. When he was 20, he stole his mother's bong, and she severely beat him with her cane because she has a damaged leg and possible liver problems. It disturbed me how casually he said it, as if it were normal. I ended the relationship a few months later. Story 30. My grandmother told me that in the 1950s, she had a miscarriage at 4 months and flushed it away. I am still as confused today as I was when she told me years ago. Story 31. My father told me that his grandmother, when she was young, once discovered her husband had cheated on her with the town's prostitute. When he got home, she amputated his leg with an axe. They lived happily ever after. My father's grandfather died in the Spanish Civil War before he was born. He did not fight, he was just collateral damage. Story 32. They were molested as a child by a friend of their family. It was especially disturbing because I was a female undergraduate student, and my male professor said that to me during his office hours unsolicited. We often spoke about personal things, but that one was beyond acceptable even for us. Story 33. My new friend told me she had been in jail on attempted murder charges. She told me this as we were sitting in my driveway, and she was dropping me off after work. Story 34. A girl I knew told me about how she lied to my old coworker about her age to sleep with him. She was known for messing with older men when she was 14 to 16. He was 22 and she was 16. When he found out she lied, he had a mental breakdown in the alley behind his work because I had gone to confront him, thinking he had known her age. She was and still is a disgusting person. At least now she cannot ruin any men's lives like that anymore since she is 18 or older. Story 35. My ex-friend once confessed to me about murdering someone when they were 12. I assumed that the way they caused the death was accidental suicide. I cut ties with them when they confessed their love for me. Story 36. Someone confessed to me that he and a random stranger on the internet got on a call on an app similar to Discord and engaged in inappropriate behavior while looking at illegal dog pornography. To top it off, that person is a furry. I know furries are not zoophiles and that they are just normal people with different passions, but why did the stars have to align on this one? Story 37. A man who is a teacher admitted he is a pedophile. I knew a girl who was repeatedly sexually assaulted since she was a child by her older brother. And when she wanted to report him, her mother said if she did, she would disown her and kick her out to the streets. I knew a girl who has been a heroin addict since she was 14 years old. She was pimped by her then boyfriend, who was much older than her, for drugs and money. She is still a heroin addict, but fortunately, her abusive boyfriend is dead. People admitting to nearly killing someone through assault. People admitting to indirectly causing someone's death through drugs. People admitting to joining the mafia in the 1990s with friends but leaving alone because their friends were killed by the mafia. A former police officer said that pointing a gun at someone made him feel so disturbed about himself that he later attempted to shoot himself. Story 38. My friend expressed his love for a girl. He was 22 years old, and she was 15. Story 39. Once, my friend and I were out in the woods telling each other stories. He admitted to killing the neighborhood cats and dogs and stitching them together. Story 40. I had a girlfriend who indulged my foot fetish. One day, she told me that she fantasized about fatally stomping my face. I was so freaked out that I broke up with her. This was before the internet, so it was easy enough to never see her again. Story 41. An ex admitted to me that she really enjoyed Interview with the Vampire. Without prompting, she said it was because of the scene with Louis and Claudia right after Claudia became a vampire. Yes, that scene. Story 42. I've thought about posting this to True Off My Chest or Confessions many times but never have. Here we go. I worked in an office years ago where they had an unusual process for the phones. Every single phone call made to the company's number, unless the caller dialed an extension, went to every phone in the office, including mine. If you weren't incredibly busy, you were expected to answer the phone, greet the caller, answer their questions, and forward the call to the right person. I received many strange calls during this time, but the one that has haunted me was from a man who confessed that he stabbed someone in the woods years earlier. I was shocked and unsure what to say, so I only managed to say, "Sorry, what did you just say?" He replied, "Yes, I stabbed him and he bled there in the woods." My boss saw that I was shaken and told me to hang up. I told her about the call, and she said, "Oh, we get weird calls sometimes." I have thought about this for years and seriously considered filing a police report at the time, and I still do from time to time, but I don't know how they would investigate something like that. It has been so long now that I can't imagine they could trace the number. Story 43. A girl told me she genuinely believes we would have world peace if all men died. She said that men do not have problems or feelings. This kind of talk is not new to me, but I was shocked that she was bold enough to say it and expect me to agree. Story 44. A neighbor of mine was going through a divorce and came over for advice and to rant. He calmly stated that when his wife was pregnant, an older neighbor lady had been yelling at his pregnant wife and threatening her. His response was to burn the older lady's home down completely. He was never caught, and I never got the name or area where it happened to report it. Needless to say, I cut all ties with him and his family. Story 45. Most recently, a woman told me that she met her boyfriend in a chat room that was specifically making fun of her for being obese. They are still together. Story 46. I was giving trumpet lessons to a girl a few years ago. After practice one day, her mother and I started talking. She then told me about how her stepfather had hurt her for years. Eventually, her mother found out. She stayed with the man but got a boyfriend who brought her home from work every night. Before learning this, I always wondered how a man could let his wife's lover drive her home from work. I didn't feel bad anymore after finding out about him. Story 47. Yeah, I also wonder what became of him. Poor kid. I moved about 2 years later. That was at least 30 years ago. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.